the Right Honourable David Willetts, the UK Minister for Universities and Science. Minister Willetts has been an MP for Havant since 1992. Havant is in Hampshire, near my neck of the woods where I live in Portsmouth. He's previously worked at the Treasury and at the Number 10 Policy Unit. David Willetts is known to all of us in the UK science and engineering community as a keen advocate of investment in research and innovation as an engine for driving economic growth. His latest publication, 8 Great Technologies, published by the think tank Policy Exchange in January this year, makes the case for investment in 8 emerging technologies where the UK has a potential to be a world leader. Ladies and gentlemen, David Willetts. Hi, David. Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much indeed, Jim. It's great to be here with such a distinguished audience. And let me, on behalf of the government, particularly welcome the representatives of the national academies from the USA and China. It's great to have the 3 national academies working together in this way. I wanted briefly to touch on the theme of your previous session, and I'm sorry to arrive just at the end of it, but I had a quick briefing that one issue that came up was how we should inspire the younger generation to get involved in engineering and technology and science, especially what those of us who can't do rapping should do to inspire them to get involved. And those of us who are therefore at the more staid end of the spectrum have our own responsibilities to discharge. And let me just tell you what we're trying to do in the British government, because alongside all the focus on rigorous academic study, which of course is important, we've also, shouldn't forget, the crucial objective of just getting kids interested and excited by it. This week, in fact on Thursday, I will be accompanying the Prime Minister to the Big Bang Fair out at the Excel Centre down in the east of London, where there will be 70,000 school kids who will be seeing for themselves examples of cutting-edge technologies, scientific experiments, new products, seeing what can be taught in the classroom. And I tell you, the Big Bang Fair, which is an annual event in which we celebrate STEM subjects, grows every year. So that's one thing we're doing this very week. We will be launching next week. We will be announcing the first set of winners, or first winner, could be one or more, I've got to be very careful here, of the Queen Elizabeth Prize for Engineering, which we hope will become like the Nobel Prizes, but with the focus on engineering excellence and brilliance, something else that we hope will capture the public imagination. Third on my list will be something that particularly captures the imagination of youngsters, which is the land speed record. And we're very proud in Britain that I think for about 75 years in the past century, successive Brits have held the world land speed record. We've now got a great man that many people in this room today will know, Richard Noble, who is planning with his Bloodhound project to get a car through the 1,000 miles an hour speed barrier. And we hope that he will achieve that in the next 18 months. And already the website in which he is describing the preparations and what's being done for the project and the design of the car and testing it down in South Africa, that website is accessed by thousands of schools across Britain who are using it as a teaching resource. And finally on my list, we all have been influenced by the American debate, the so-called Apollo effect, getting people involved in science. I don't know if what President Hennessy's first excitement was from the watching the Apollo missions, but there is an entire age group that for whom it was one of the most exciting events of their childhood or youth. And although it is on a much more modest scale, I very much hope now that Britain is playing a far more active role in the European Space Agency and has joined the International Space Station, that our trainee astronaut Tim Peake will get a flight. And if, and it's still an if he does secure a mission up to the space station, we're absolutely determined to use the period, the run-up, the year or 2 years that we would have to plan for that, to use the excitement of a British astronaut. They're rather less frequent than Chinese or American astronauts, to engage young people in these great excitement of engineering. So there is a lot that we can do, even through the conventional forms of public policy and science policy, to help interest kids in science. And we are going to absolutely rise to the challenge of getting them excited by the not just the theories of science, but the technologies and the engineering that apply it and drive it forward in that fascinating interaction of science, technology and engineering. And I wanted very briefly to touch on that in my remarks. You heard from Jim about 8 great technologies, and we in Britain have been doing horizon scanning, foresight exercises. And I've been drawing on the advice of the Technology Strategy Board, our research councils, the Government Office of the Chief Scientist, as we try to horizon scan and identify great technologies which are going to change the world, which have the capacity to rise to some of the big global challenges you've been focusing on today, and where Britain has its part to play, working, of course, alongside others. No one country can solve these problems on its own. And very briefly, just because I've been fascinated to know, especially when our international visitors share this analysis, the 8 that we have identified are, first of all, data-driven science, the power of high-performance computing linked to the software to get maximum output from high-performance computing, and its capability, indeed, to transform conventional engineering challenges, the arrival of the virtual prototype, rather than having physically to build kit and test it and stick it into a wind tunnel or test it in some other way. Instead, as you get to seriously powerful computing, you can do virtual modelling and virtual prototyping. But you can also have data-driven discovery. You can harness the power of the computer through smart software. Second on my list, as a crucial source of data, and commercial applications from satellites coming from space. We still think that the amount of information we can get, for example, simply about the state of our planet from smart satellites is enormous. We think this has still not properly been harvested. We have got now a satellite application centre at Harwell, just outside Oxford, which we are hoping to become not just a British but a European and global centre. We in Britain, of course, are proud of our engineering achievements, particularly in small satellites, but we want to analyse and use the incredible data flow coming from space and satellites. The third area of technology that we're interested in, and this still relates to computing because, again, it's only possible because of smart computing and very powerful software, is robotics and autonomous systems. I had the privilege the other month in California of sitting in Google's driverless car as we rolled down the freeways outside Palo Alto with nobody's hand on the steering wheel. And, of course, the advantages of these driverless cars is they're so much safer than when humans drive things. That's why they say when we have the autonomous plane, it'll be flown by a man and a dog. The man's job will be to feed the dog, and the dog's job will be to bite the man if he touches the controls. And that, we believe, is the future. I will be next week going to, in fact, later this week, I'll be in Oxford seeing their driverless car, which, again, we are investing in with very smart software. And if I may say so, and just a hint here of comparison and rivalry with our friends in the US, when we looked at the NASA Curiosity probe and the rover vehicle that it now has on Mars, of course, landing the Curiosity probe on Mars last year was I mean, there are experts in this room, I think was probably one of the great engineering feats of 2012. And it really was an extraordinary accomplishment, and people can take great pride in that. But we do observe that now that the Mars rover vehicle is trundling around on Mars, it does require frequent instructions from Earth, and each instruction takes a long time to reach it. We hope that when the European Space Agency's Mars rover vehicle lands, it will have a significant higher level of autonomy, enabling it to travel further distances without the time delays required from frequent instructions from Earth. So we hope, at least in that respect, we will be able to achieve a technological advance on the current rover vehicle. So the first three technologies, and I must go through this very briefly, but the first three technologies, high-performance computing and the software to make them effective, data from space via satellites, robotics and autonomous systems, they all have a kind of software link. Now we move on to where dry IT technologies meet wet biological sciences. And it is extraordinarily fortunate that we have discovered the structure of DNA, and that this data comes in digital form just at the time when we have the IT technologies that work with data in digital form. And that means that, as they say to us in Cambridge, the future is the convergence of dry and wet, the convergence of classic biology and the techniques of engineering and it's their application to life sciences. And that is why my fourth technology is synthetic biology, which essentially is the application of engineering techniques to genetics. And it is, of course, the learned societies in this room from these three countries who are leading the way in agreeing world standards in synthetic biology, which I think is a really important cooperative endeavour of our three leading scientific nations. Next on my list of the wetter technologies would be regenerative medicine and extraordinary challenges. First of all, of course, growing cell tissue outside the body. I have seen at Imperial's research labs in West London the aggregation of heart muscle tissue on a plate in a lab, and when it reaches a certain critical mass, it starts pulsating like a heart. So I ask, as a layman, is there a kind of Michelangelo moment when someone has to put the flicker of life into it? And I'm assured, no. As you grow these cells, these living cells, at a certain point of aggregation, they start beating. But in a way, that's the easier bit. The real challenge in regenerative medicine is the manufacturing of sufficient volumes of these cells in order genuinely to be able to help and deliver regenerative medicine. That's something which our research centre at Guy's, Catapult Centre there, is working on. And again, you find that this interaction of science, technology and engineering is the real challenge. Sixth on my list is, as well as the human application of biological sciences, would be agricultural science and the challenge of sustainable intensification of agriculture, and in terms of the big challenges you've been talking about today. Agriculture, where for a long time in Europe, certainly, we just thought about butter mountains and wine lakes and surpluses. That looks like an age ago. Now we understand, not least from the excellent work of our own chief scientist here, John Beddington, that the importance of harnessing the powers of technology and engineering to improve our food supplies in the future. And my last two items on the list are advanced materials, nanotechnology. We have the arrival of metamaterials, materials built from the atom up, materials that are going to transform everything from aerospace to the automotive sector. We, of course, are very proud of the two Russian scientists who, at Manchester, because we try in Britain to provide a welcoming environment from scientists around the world, got the Nobel Prize for the discovery of graphene, and we have put £60 million into a graphene research institute I can report, and this might be of particular interest to our Chinese friends, that Manchester, of course, is one of the places, well, the main place where Friedrich Engels, Karl Marx's co-author, lived and was indeed a mill owner. And we have encountered, as we invest in the Graphene Research Institute in Manchester, we have encountered a problem because we want this to be a world-class research institute, and in order for it to be working with items at the atomic level, it has to be incredibly stable, which means that they have to dig foundations 17 metres deep. And in the course of digging the foundations, they have uncovered the basement of Friedrich Engels' house. So and indeed some of our enthusiastic Nobel Prize winners thought that the Graphene Research Institute should be renamed, therefore, the Engels Institute, which I'm not sure was quite how the Chancellor, when he found the money, envisaged it being named. But it is, we are committed to research in these advanced nanomaterials. And finally, of course, energy and energy storage. And this, for us in Britain, is an example of something that we haven't always got right, where we need to raise our game. Looking around this room, there must be hundreds of mobile phones and laptops and iPads, probably powered by lithium-ion batteries, based on a chemical reaction that was developed at Oxford in the early 1980s. But although British scientists did the work, the industrial production of those batteries largely went to Japan, which was better organised to commercialise and industrialise the discovery. We want to raise our game on that, and it's why the government, as well as supporting scientific activity and the research base, are also supporting investment in the development and commercialisation of the engineering and the technologies needed to spread them. We can't simply rely on business to fund all those costs. There is a genuine role for government in taking science and driving its application. So those are 8 great technologies. I think between them they really do have the scope to rise to the great global challenges that we are facing and addressing in this conference today. I'm sure that the expertise in this room today is going to be able to rise to the challenge of delivering those technologies to tackle the global challenges. But if by any chance we in this room aren't able to tackle them all, it is so important that the younger generation coming on after us are encouraged themselves to participate in science and engineering, and that's what we're committed to. And I am finally able to announce, because we are celebrating today this research and engineering and scientific collaboration, I'm able to announce that from our budget we will be investing a further £47 million in 5 frontier engineering projects which are aimed at addressing some of the major engineering challenges facing the world, and projects focusing on the summit's themes of resilience, health and technology and growth, developing new diagnostic tools and therapies in health, exploring the use of hexagonal structures in technology, improving urban infrastructure planning and modelling. We continue, even when public expenditure is tight, to support science and technology in any way that we can, because we know that is our best hope of tackling the global challenges this conference is all about. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.